from the good folk at Silect on essentially where you get started with MP authoring. Because as anyone that's had a go, me included, it's kind of daunting to get started, and everyone starts somewhere. And who better to present that session than Mike Sargent? Hello, Mike. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. So this session is just going to be a quick introduction to the various ways of authoring management packs. The one thing I do want to highlight here is that you'll be getting a copy of all these slides. I've got a lot of links in them later on in the references section. Don't worry about trying to get them immediately because you'll get the slides with you to you shortly. To get started with MP authoring, we're going to be talking about the various tools you can use, the techniques you can use. We're going to have a demonstration of some of those. I've only got about half an hour, so I'm going to have to rush through some of that. And then we've got some good resources for you to look up, and we'll talk through those as well. The tools. So this is most of the tools that I know of. You can use the SCOM console. It has authoring built into it. Its primary focus, I think would be fair to say, is reporting on your monitoring. But it does have a fair bit of authoring in there. It uses wizards to create rules, monitors, object discovery. And it's a good way to do some ad hoc work. I know a lot of people have been very successful with it, and we'll be demonstrating that. The next way you can do it is text editing, because in the end, a management pack is just a big chunk of XML. So you could use Notepad, Notepad++, or Visual Studio just to do the XML editing. I'm going to tell you what you can do there, and then I'm going to tell you why you don't want to do it. The next tool to look at is the Visual Studio authoring extensions. Now, VSAE is provided by Microsoft. It's a free download, but you do need Visual Studio to run it against. It builds management packs by creating a bunch of separate .mpx files, and then when you do a build, it merges them all together. The good thing about that, or the very good thing about that, is that it led into the introduction of fragments, which we'll be talking about a lot later. The next tool to look at is Silect's MP Author. Now, this is a free download, and it does intermediate level authoring using wizards. We will show, actually I'll be showing MP Author Professional. The professional version is a paid facility that has additional authoring capabilities. So some more rules, some more monitors, some more object discoveries, that sort of thing. Or MP Studio. Now, MP Studio and MP Author Professional have exactly the same authoring capabilities, but MP Studio has a shared SQL database so that if you have multiple people working on management pack authoring, they can all share that same database and they all have access to the same management packs with version control, auditing, a lot of additional stuff there for, with more than one person, it's pretty much essential. And the final tool we'll be talking about today is brand new. It's the Silect Operations Portal. This is web-based authoring and administration. Harold will be doing the demonstration of that, and I think a lot of you are going to find that one very interesting as well. The techniques. So as I mentioned, management packs are essentially great big chunks of XML. So you can use Notepad, Notepad++, or Visual Studio. The other thing is fragments. Now, fragments are chunks of management packs. They're not complete on their own, but they're complete within what they need. You'll see a bit more about that. And you can use fragments with VSAE, Author Professional, MP Studio, or the portal. Or you can use wizards. The SCOM console uses wizards. MP Author Professional and MP Studio both can use wizards. My personal preference is wizards because it lets a developer, that's me, do all the hard work on trying to figure out the best way to generate these management packs so that users don't have to think about it too much. It's easier for them. But all of these techniques are completely viable, and various people here today will have used all of these on occasion. So, XML editing. Why? Well, it's great for quick and easy changes, for minor changes, but you don't want to use it in general. The SCOM management pack XML schema must be adhered to. There's an additional XML schema for knowledge articles. And the MP is a complex structure with relationships between elements. And if you get any of them wrong, and it's pretty easy to make a mistake if you're just using text editing, it's very difficult to figure out exactly what needs to be done. And it's easy to make a mistake. But for some minor changes, it's a great way to make a quick change. And we'll be showing that off. Having said that, let's demonstrate that. And I am going to bring up Visual Studio here. This is a management pack that I created actually using MP Author Pro. All it does, this management pack, is it monitors one service to make sure it's running. And as you can see, it's about 100 lines of code here. And they all have to be pretty much correct. There's identity here, which identifies the management pack and gives it a friendlier name here. There are references. These talk about other management packs that we're going to use in this management pack to do some pre-existing stuff. This lets you build on the best practices of others. In particular, I want to talk about this Windows management pack. Every reference has an alias. It has the name of the management pack, a minimum version that must be resolved because of features that have been provided by later versions, and the key token, because reference management packs are always sealed. And you have to have these things all right. Doing them manually can be difficult, so I don't recommend that. Fortunately, all the tools out there make that pretty easy for you. The next thing we have here is the actual unit monitor that I created. As you can see, there's a bunch of attributes here, like the name, the accessibility, and the one I wanted to point out here is this type ID. So the type of this monitor, this unit monitor that I've created, is this Microsoft.Windows check NT service state monitor type. Now, from the name, it's pretty obvious that we're going to be checking the state of an NT service. This is that alias to the Windows reference, and the exclamation mark there separates the two so that you know that this isn't local, this is from a different management pack, which means you don't need to write that, you can just use it. And that's why we really love references. Now, there's a bunch of other properties here, you know, the alert settings, the whether you're going to alert on which state, whether it's going to auto-resolve, etc. We have an alert message here, which is just an identifier of the message. And we're going to see that a bit more later. In fact, you can see it right at the bottom of the screen here in this string resource. We'll follow up on that. Within that alert message, there are some parameters that can be replaced in the display. So the first one is this property, which is the name. So this is pulling the name out of a property bag that was returned by that unit monitor type ID that we saw. So this is the name of the service. This is a property, the principal name property of the Windows computer that is hosting our target class here. Trying to get these right without a tool, it can be a bit of a challenge. Even within the tool, it's taken us a lot of time, a lot more time than I care to remember, to try and get these things right. The hosting levels is one that's always fun. And then we have the configuration, and you'll recognize this line because it's very similar. This is the network name of the Windows computer that hosts this, the target class, which in this case would be Windows operating system. A slight difference between the principal name and the network name. And then we have the service name. Now, most of you probably know that within the Microsoft world, pretty much everything has a real name and a display name. And the display names can be localized. It's important to note that you have to have the real name here. And so having means of browsing to find real names from display names is a really useful thing here. Finally, we came back to that string resource we were talking about for the alert message. This just defines it as a string resource. It doesn't actually give the value. The value is given down here in the language packs in the display string. So this is that display string for that alert message. This is sort of the one-liner that names the alert. And here's our description, which will be displayed. And this curly brace 0 and curly brace 1, that's where we do substitution for the service name and the computer name here. Trying to get all this correct with XML editing, it can be a real pain. And so that's why I suggest don't use XML editing unless you're doing fairly minor stuff. If you want to change, these display strings, the names, the description, even to a degree, you can certainly do that, and it's often the fastest way to do it. If you want to change simple parameters like auto-resolve from true to false, go ahead. But trying to change anything structural in XML editing is just going to be too painful. So let's come back to my screen here, and we'll go on to the next thing. So, actually, I'm right on time. Fragments. Now, a fragment is a part of a management pack. It's not a complete management pack, but when you compile a bunch of fragments together into a management pack, you get, the complete management pack you're looking for. It's described as a reusable template for building monitoring. You can create your own fragments, and a lot of corporations do this. They use fragments to ensure that monitoring is done in a consistent manner, so that even with half a dozen people building management packs to monitor, and let's use NT services as an example again, you want to ensure that they're all monitored in the same way, and that the messaging is all consistent between them. So if a dozen different people go through a dozen different wizards, through the SCOM console, through MP Author, or through VSAE at its sort of native level, you're going to get different messaging. You're going to get them implemented slightly differently. But if everybody uses the same fragment, it's going to be very consistent. And that has been something that we've found a lot of larger corporations are very insistent on. Fragments are supported in VSAE, MP Author Professional, and MP Studio. And I should have included the portal there. We will talk about that a bit more. Kevin Holman, a name that hopefully most of you know, was the one who largely promoted fragments. He didn't initiate, he didn't create them, the concept even, but he promoted them. And he's got a lot of good articles about them. Again, you'll be getting copies of these slides, so don't worry about the links here. We'll be talking about that a bit more. Now, the tools. So within fragments, we can use VSAE, or we can use MP Author Professional and MP Studio. Kevin's got some articles on those, so let's take a look at them. Now, VSAE, there we go, I'm on the right system. This is actually that same management pack we were looking at before that's monitoring the AppV client service. What I want to show is how we use fragments here. So this is just an example, but I have the one fragment copied into my downloads directory here. I would have a better choice if I did this routinely. We add this to the solution. Now the solution contains two files now, these two MPX files. This is the original. This is the fragment that Kevin created. Fragments consist of a number of properties that you need, or a number of values that you need to substitute in. So for instance, company ID. And with VSAE, the way you do that is you use search and replace. So I'm going to search for company ID, and I'm going to replace it with Silect. So I'll skip over the first one, and I'll just hit replace here. And we'll replace the 8 or 9 different places that happens. And then we would go on to the next property. App name, unique ID. The one I want to focus on, though, is this registry value path. Now, where this is used is just as a path here. And there's sort of no hint as to what you want there. You need to put that path together correctly, and there's no browsers here that will help you with that. Now, if you've got it, if you know the path, if you've been using the regular registry editor, you can copy the path from there. But within here, there's nothing that really helps you with that. And so that's something where browsers will really help, and we'll show how that's done. If I fill this in, and I'm going to do a very bad job of this, but I want to just quickly complete this. I'm going to put an app name in here, and we'll do this as quickly as possible. HackaSCOM, 9 occurrences. We have our unique ID. which I was going to make 2022, but the way it's used, it actually has to have a letter in front of it. That's just something that's unique to this fragment. And then we need this registry value path. And I'm going to do something very bad here. I'm just going to find that, and I'm going to put in, geez, I wish I had a better example of this. I'm going to put in some garbage here. I'm just going to put in software, which would be technically legal. It's meaningless in this case, but I don't have a browser. And so when I want to build my management pack, I just click the build here, build solution. I cannot say it because it's write protected. That's smart. It builds it and it merges together all those MPX files and creates the final MP. You can go and find that. I will need to show that to you. So that's a very quick look at how VSAE does this. Let's look at how MP Author Professional does it. So I'm going to open up that same file that we've been playing with. I'm going to go to import fragment. Now, we have a fragment library, which includes the fragments from Kevin Holman, Kevin Justin, and some from Silect, hosted on GitHub. And you can click this download button. I've already done that, of course, so it's up to date. That gives you this search for fragments here. We have all of the fragments that are listed, so 146 fragments. You can select only monitors. You can select only ones with parameters like app name, which can be, of course, a lot of them, or category, which will be a much smaller number. You can specify author, and you can do a text search here as well. In my case, I already know which one I'm going to use. This is class and registry value exists. So we have those same 4 parameters that we're looking at. Within MP Studio and MP Author, we remember the previous values that were used. So I don't have to type in Silect HackaSCOM Y2022 again, because we remember them. Now, company name is one you're probably only ever going to type in once, because you're going to create them all for the same company name. So that's easy. Others you will change, but you may be doing several related things, so you'll have a very similar thing. If you're doing multiple services for the same application, you would have only had to specify app name once. But this is the point I really wanted to show off. Excuse me. We have a browser. So here we can look at the registry. So on my local computer here, and we can browse to other computers on the network. Under HKey local machine, under software, under FileZilla 3, I had chosen this. This is just an example, doesn't mean anything, but that's how quickly you can browse. And now we have the correct version, so if we the correct string. So where in VSAE, I sort of had to guess, and I didn't know exactly the format. I might have actually used the wrong backslashes here, that sort of thing. With a browser, we can do that, and we get the right value every time. And we have browsers for many properties. I don't want to burden you with the whole list of them, but wherever possible, we've tried to do a browser, and those have been very popular. Import, and now we have the classes added here, and we have our discovery, and within our language pack, and I'm just going to look at that in XML so you can see the various parts and pieces. Here's our class name, here's our discovery name, and this is just merged in. We have another concept in MP Studio called MPF files, so management pack fragment files. And these are more like VSAE in that it's a list of the fragments you want to include in a management pack, the name of the fragment, and for each of the parameters, the values you want to use. And at the end, once you are finished, you do a build, and it creates the final management pack for you. It's very similar to the build process in Visual Studio. The thing with MPF files is it's very easy to edit them. So if it turns out you don't want to include a fragment, you simply delete the line from the MPF file. We've got UI to do all of that. You can also go in and change the various values, so it's quick to update them. And one of the really nice things that we hope is very useful to people is if you update the fragment, then when you build, you'll pick up the latest definition of that fragment. So if somebody changes, for instance, say that messaging we were talking about for the NT service monitor, if somebody was to change that messaging, as soon as they rebuild the MPF file, everything will get that new messaging. And so that's something we think is going to be very useful to people. Let's come back to my slides. Now I'm a bit behind. So the Silect Operations Portal is a new product. It lets you, it's browser-based. It lets you author new MPs using fragments, make changes, view agent workflow, set maintenance schedules, and there's some more good stuff coming there I'm not going to talk about. Role-based access lets you customize the user experience, and Harold's going to be demonstrating this later, so I'm just going to skip through this very quickly. The other technique is to author using wizards. Now, the SCOM console, as I mentioned, primarily for reporting on monitoring, but it does some authoring, a bit limited, but it can do some authoring. And then MP Studio, MP Author, and MP Author Professional, their sole focus is authoring. MP Studio has the same authoring as Professional, but it's got the lifecycle support that we were talking about. So let's come back, or come here to MP Author Professional. I have this open. Actually, I did want to demonstrate the SCOM console here. So let's show you what it's like to create a unit monitor in the SCOM console. Again, we're going to use Windows Services. We're going to select a junk management pack here. We give it a name. We select the target here. From the list, I'm going to choose a good one, which would be Windows Operating System. Parent monitor's availability, the service name. And again, here's a browser so that you can look at these things and see if you're interested in the application host helper service, that's the correct name to use, their app host service. Without a browser, it's a bit difficult. Here's where you can configure whether the health is service is running as healthy or service is not running as healthy. Generate alerts. See, most of this stuff you can put in various values here. So you can put in things from the target, operating system version. The host is here for Windows Computer and management group. And we also have data. One thing that the SCOM console doesn't do as well is it doesn't know about the various data that is coming in, so it can only put in placeholder here. So you'd actually need to replace this, chevron, string chevron with a name there. I'm going to just cancel out of that. What I want to show is doing the same thing here. So let's create a new service monitor in MP Author Professional. Again, we have the machine that we want to search for the services that are running. Which service did we look at? It was that same one there. Again, we've got the name. But one of the things we can do here is we can filter this list. So if you only wanted print stuff, we can get that for you. But let's come back to the whole list. And we'll choose that guy again. Our target, in this case, defaults to the first class that's in our management pack because that's the most likely thing you're going to want, but the whole list is here. We produce a suitable name, but of course you're free to change that. We let you specify run as credentials if you need them. Now with a service monitor, you will almost never need run as credentials, but we added that everywhere. It's a possibility in case you need to do it. Here you can choose whether running is healthy or not running is healthy. Here's our alert. And this is all very similar, but we have a bit more information because we know what the data is that's coming back in. So we have a list of all the things that are coming in. So we have, the start mode if you want to report on that, or the service type that quickly. And of course, we've got all the stuff for the target, the host, and the various group information if you need any of that. We summarize it. You can go back to previous panes and change it. And there you go. As I said, MP Studios is pretty much the same. I want to check my timing here. I'm a bit behind. So I think probably the smartest thing to do is to move on. And we're going to be looking at the portal. And so Harold's going to do a quick demonstration of the portal. Over to you, Harold.
All right, thanks, Mike. Yeah, we'll keep this pretty short. Let me just share up my screen. Okay, hold on a sec. All right. So we're just taking a quick look at the portal. Thanks very much, Mike, for that description of the various tools and techniques. I'm just going to show you real quick something that we've been working on for a little while now with the portal, which provides a web browser-based experience with authoring management packs, with creating overrides, editing overrides, etc. Because we've been talking a lot about fragments, I'm just going to show you the fragment authoring experience here in the portal. I've logged in as an administrator. We do support multiple roles within the portal. The admin, of course, has full authority to do anything. And I'm going to create a new management pack. We have a number of folders in our store database where I can create them. I'm going to add it to the development folder. And as it creates the management pack structure, the very first thing it's going to ask me to is to add a fragment to this management pack. So let's just add a very simple discovery for a registry key. Call it the portal Silect. I'll just type in a registry key path here. And let's call it the class name reg key, and let's add that. So what the portal is going to do is going to take that fragment, it's going to inject those parameters that I entered, and going to create the necessary XML that SCOM can understand. So now we've got a class defined in our management pack. Let's import another fragment, and let's just perhaps take a look at an event. So I'm going to search for events, event log equals. I'm going to select that fragment. Again, just going to enter some information here. I'm going to target that class that we've just created. I'm going to look for just really a random event here and event. And let's go ahead and add that fragment to the management pack. And so at this point, we have a fully functional management pack. We have a discovery. We have a rule that looks for a specific event. If I want to take a look at the XML, as Mike was showing you earlier, we can see all the XML that has been created. And again, this gives us this full browser-based experience with creating that management pack. I can go back now and do some editing. I can remove elements. And if I want to work with existing management packs, whether they're in that store database where you might have multiple developers working on them, or perhaps those are even management packs that are running within your SCOM environment where you want to create some overrides, we have the ability to do that as well. But in the essence of time here, I'm going to, I think, pass it back to you, Mike. I think you've got a couple of slides to wrap things up, if I'm not mistaken.
I do. Thank you, Harold. So the last things I've got is just some resources for you to look at here. So Brian Wren was a documentation guy for Microsoft. He still is. I think he's working mostly on Azure these days. But he was the one who created the first authoring guide, and he produced a set of videos. And so let me just quickly bring those up, which should be these ones here. So this is a System Center Management Pack authoring guide. It's a fairly complex thing with lots of examples and exercises to work through. Some really good stuff. Brian is an excellent author. But even better than that, he's produced a set of videos. So there's 28 modules here. They range from, I think, as short as about maybe 10 minutes. You know, there's one that's 10 minutes and 38 seconds. I think there's as long as an hour and a quarter, an hour and a half sort of thing. Excellent. I highly recommend them. And just to let you know, every couple of years, I go through and rewatch these just to bring myself up to speed. So these are very highly recommended. Other resources, Kevin Holman. Now, I've mentioned his name before. If you're not familiar with him, Kevin is, I think, a premier field service engineer, although that title probably changes on a weekly basis. Microsoft does love renaming things. But Kevin himself is just a constant. He produces lots of blog articles on everything from installing SCOM to tuning it to creating management packs to, just everything. And he's a wonderful resource. And as I mentioned, he's got this fragment library that we accumulate and publish as well. So if I come back here, we have Kevin's homepage here. There's about 10 articles per page here, and you get some idea of what's going on. There's about 28 pages. So I'm thinking somewhere in the neighborhood of 250, 280 articles there. This would probably be my first place I would ever go if I'm searching for how to do something in SCOM. The fragment library he updates on GitHubs. It's all available. As you know, we help make it a little more accessible and provide some additional fragments here, but certainly something to keep your eye on. Other resources, TopCore, it's Bob Cornelison and his friends. They have a training course, and so that is his page here. The next thing we have is some resources from Silect, of course. MP Author, the free download. There's the link to get that. We have an authoring course. And of course, we've done previous sessions with MP University. Those sessions are recorded and available on YouTube with that link. And I'm just going to come back here to MP Author. So there's the overview on it and download. There's a lot of information about it. There's the development course, and all of our videos on YouTube are here. Actually, I don't have any idea how many there are. There's quite a few. It's not just MP University sessions. We've put up stuff about new versions. You know, here's some new features in version 11. And I think, oh, the other thing is the community. As I mentioned, you know, the people who are using SCOM are not really in conflict with each other, so they're usually very helpful. If you've got a question, do your Google search, do your Bing search, and post a question, and you'll probably get a very good answer fairly quickly. And that's the end of my presentation, and I want to thank you all for being here today.